How are you?
Good afternoon, everyone. Call this meeting of the Missouri Western State University Board of Governors Finance meeting to order. We have a quorum present here today. We have seven governors and 1, 2, 3, 6, 5. Oh, we've got 7. We've got the non-voting, right? There we go. Work on my math. I was trying to make sure that Hannah was included with that. So before we start our meeting, we want to do probably what is going to be the most bittersweet part of the day. It's certainly a celebration to recognize a person who has done so much for this university and given so much of her time and been such a incredibly valuable asset and cheerleader for this great institution. Debbie Smith, who has served on this board for quite a while. She has a lot of history with that. Debbie, I hope you can hear me. I believe you can. We unfortunately don't have her here in person with restrictions and whatnot going on. I wish we could have the true celebration and give her the round of hugs that so many of us would willingly want to do and look forward to that opportunity in the hopefully not too distant future. So we'll have rain checks with all of that. So we're acknowledging Debbie virtually, but she is on the phone and can hear us, and hopefully we will be able to hear her when the time is appropriate. Debbie Smith was appointed by Governor Jay Nixon in August 2010 for a term that expired in 2014. She continued to serve on the board in 2014 and 2015. In November of 2015, she was reappointed for a term that expired in October 2020 and continued to serve on our board until December of last year. During her time as a board member, Debbie was the board's vice chair in 2017, 2018, and once again the next year. Then she was elected as the board's chair in 2019, 2020, her last full year on the board. That's the official stuff that is written. I didn't write anything else out because I wanted to talk more personal to Debbie because she's meant so much to me. I actually knew her husband better than her before the board involvement. And then it's been my distinct pleasure to get to know Debbie so well on both a professional and a personal basis. When Debbie was the vice chair when I came onto the board and was a great mentor and role model with that. Then when she was the chair, I served as her vice chair and spent a lot of time in executive meetings with her, countless phone calls. Debbie was just such a tremendous sounding board and always had this university first in her motives and in her heart, and was just so student oriented. I mean, very student centric with that. And I hope we in some way can continue that legacy of Debbie looked at every issue that we had of how is this going to affect and benefit the students here at Missouri Western. And we give that lip service sometimes, but we need to use that as our honorarium to Governor Debbie Smith in keeping that at the forefront of our thoughts and all of our efforts going forward. Like I said, with Debbie, if I talk too much, I may actually break down because it just so intertwined with working with her, and her love for the university was exemplary and contagious. And I know everyone else kind of echoes that view, but Debbie means so much to all of us here. And as small tokens, this is going to be a little odd. I need a cutout something. But we have a clock that is engraved that says, presented to Debbie Smith in sincere appreciation for your dedicated service and outstanding leadership, Board of Governors, 2010 to 2014 and 2015 to 2020, Missouri Western State University, and also has her portrait that has graced our walls here. Now she can put it over her fireplace. And just small tokens, but Debbie, you have our deepest appreciation from this board and from the university as a whole, and we give you a big round of applause for all that you have done for us. Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you so much, Governor Teeman, and all the Board of Governors there. And it truly was an honor and a joy to serve on the Board of Governors. If I might, I'd like to first congratulate and thank Bob Walleman, who's pointed to my slot on the Board of Governors. And off the top of my head, I really can't think of too many other people in our community that really care so deeply about the success of the university. And I just met him, I don't know, several years ago. And he's just such a kind and compassionate person and an excellent businessman. I'm just very grateful he's there to help lead the university on the Board of Governors. I'm very grateful for all the many friendships that I've formed along the way with people on the board. A lot of excellent people on the board in the past and certainly now. Yes, and Governor Teeman, we went through a lot in the last few years, and I'm grateful for everybody's friendship and hard work along the way. I do appreciate very much the opportunity to say farewell. I'm sorry I couldn't be there. I have an appointment at 1 o'clock. There are a lot of things that I thought about saying and kind of listing things, but seriously, the most important thing I can say to all of you going forward is thank you. Thank you all from top to bottom on the university staff, administration, professors, cabinet, interim president, and the Board of Governors. Thank you all so much for your dedication, care, and commitment that each and every one of you on this campus show on a daily basis to our students, and for always working towards the best interest of our university. To me, it's as obvious today as it was decades ago when I was a student there, and I won't say how many decades, but it was more than 2 or 3. But it's just obvious to me how much our students mean to our professors, and they really truly love and care and want the best for each individual. To me, Missouri Western is a gem in this state and in our community, and I just know with your leadership that the university will continue on with this vibrant future, and I'll continue to be one of your biggest cheerleaders. Thank you all so very much.
Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you. Go forward with your finance meeting.
Sure you don't want to still participate in that?
No. I've had enough of numbers for a while. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you, Debbie.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Right now, we will move into the business portion of our meeting, and we call CFO Daryl Morrison for his presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone.
just a couple of items of, for the order of the good. You should have 2 pages at your table to replace 2 pages in the book with, and I've highlighted it. I made an error and plugged something in wrong on the sheet, and so therefore does not change the bottom line number, but at the same time you can I highlighted those so you can see the errors. The slide presentation that I have prepared for this afternoon takes into account the changes that are accurate on that. Okay, I think they're the last couple of pages of the attachment 1. Okay. I'd also like to say that the past governor, Debbie Smith, did above and beyond. She, along with many of you in this room, have we've been battling this for some time, our financial situation, and stand here very much appreciative of her work and support over the past year and a half. So with that being said, let's dig in, okay? The first slide I want to focus on this afternoon deals with the university's cash position. And you can see there's a timing issue with a normal draw that we make. The feds didn't get it to our bank until early February instead of late January as it had in years past. So there's a little bit of difference there, but our cash position, even from 2 years ago, continues to improve slightly, which just indicates to us all that the steps we're taking are working. It's a slow process, as I've said before, but we are moving in the right direction. Okay. These are the documents that are in your book, and from a fund accounting standpoint, a governmental accounting standpoint, we break things down into educational and general funds, the undesignated portion, the designated portion, restricted funds, auxiliary operations, and of course our plant funds. Okay. And as you look at this, the revised budget has been adjusted here by $1.8 million for tuition and fees for the current fiscal year. We're anticipating another 2.4% to come in the summer months for tuition and fees. You can see the other adjustments that have been made there. So we're moving along there. Salaries and compensation at the end of January, these are snapshot dates, 52%. So we're tracking a little head right there from a pro rata share, supplies and services, of course. A lot of that deals with contracts. The reason that's a little higher and closer to 2/3, even though we're not 2/3 a year, is the upfront costs associated with some contracts and licensing and things like that. Our scholarship numbers are slightly below forecast at this period of time, which would mirror, you would think, the tuition and fee numbers that we have with a lesser enrollment. Our state appropriations, we do have some good news on this front. The budget has been revised to $19.6 million for appropriations for state for the operating portion. The governor also released $1.9 million that was in our Appropriation Act, but has limited that to capital items, deferred maintenance type items on the campus. And so we'll be talking about that a little bit later, but that money is there. We had to have a plan, as we've discussed, on what we would use the funds for, and we have that prepared. So the bottom line here, as you look at this, is we see that we're 2.7 to the good on our normal operating funds of the university, okay? The educational general portion of that. As we move to our designated funds, these are primarily student fees and the like, where they have a designated purpose for usage. These funds also roll forward from one year to the next. Okay, any unspent balance would roll forward. So you can see we're tracking there how those funds are being allocated across supplies, services, the salary, the scholarships, things like that. If you'll notice, one of the issues in this is the 685,000 at the bottom here. That's the prior year roll forward. That those departments have said, hey, we've got these monies. We want to use them sometime this year. So that's been incorporated into this budget. The auxiliary revenues, as you can see here, primarily consist of the athletics, housing, food service, bookstore, and then some miscellaneous auxiliary things on campus. Revenues are down slightly in that. You can imagine, you can see 133,000 there for the athletic number. We all understand that. We've got limited capacity for gate receipts at basketball games. We had one football game on campus. So those are the result of those types of things dealing with the pandemic. The food service, the revenue is down there. The expense is also down on the food service, and this just deals with the number of students that are living in our residence halls and things like that. Salaries, supplies and services, you can see there's been a big reduction in that, primarily, as I said, the food service, minimal to the bookstore and some other items that have been taken into account. So we get down, this is the issue, 7.2 on our auxiliary operations, where we're below what we need to be. We will, like most universities, transfer money from the operating, the E&G, to support some of our endeavors in the auxiliary funds. Okay, it's pretty standard practice in higher education. The restricted funds, these are gifts and grants primarily, federal grants, state grants, and local grants. And what you see here from the original budget to the revised budget, this is primarily due to the funds that we have received dealing with COVID, the CARES Act money. The 1.2 is the federal portion. For this fiscal year, the state has released 3.9. And then Dr. Looney and Mr. Johnston and myself were able to secure 500 plus from Buchanan County. So they're very much involved, very much supportive of the university, and we're appreciative of that. You see the operating expenses here for those and where they've gone and how much money we have reinvested of our CARES Act. And this goes back, if you recall, a couple of board meetings back, we went through a lot of items dealing with what we had done with our CARES Act money. And that's the capital expenditures that we've been able to do. Okay. And then we have our actual to plant numbers, and you'll see what we've got going on there. We're again investing in capital with these funds. We've got other type things that are associated with this. The interest is the numbers way below at 28.3 for this point in time in the year, but that's just when the payments are due on debt. Okay. We're on modified accrual. So we're not fully accruing it on a monthly basis. Okay. And you might also notice that's where I made one of my mistakes. If you look in your book, the 2915 was put in revised and actual, but I had to adjust that. So we've got it corrected here on this slide. So the total of all the funds when we get down to it is this number. We currently stand at a projected budget deficit of $4.5 million. And that is very troublesome, but we have a plan. Okay, so, but it is disheartening. We started the year at 3.9 and we're up to 4.5. And I'm hopeful that I'll be able to explain what has happened to the university and share some information with you this afternoon that will help answer some of the questions that you may have. So let's look at a few of our key financial components that that make up our budget, that our budget consists of, I should say. Let's talk about tuition and fees first. It's a big ticket item. If you will look at this particular graph on the screen, what you will see is that we are currently for FY21 at the FY17 rate for tuition and fee revenue. Okay. What you see is an arch where we've trended down. Now you're going to hear a lot of reasons probably on why this. I think there is no bigger reason in my mind than the pandemic itself and how it's impacted our campus. That's a major driving force for us. If you look at this, you see where the credit hour reductions are across the campus. We see we're down in business and professional studies, liberal arts, science and health. Okay, so this is for the academic year. This is fall and spring combined. This is where we are from a credit hour production. Okay. Here's the other driving force: scholarships. Okay, discounts. What are we doing? If you'll recall the number that we talked about earlier from 2017, we said we were on pace from a tuition and fee to FY 2017 number in the slide. But as you look at this, you'll see that we're 5 million almost, 4.5 above on scholarships and discounts for FY 21 compared to where we were there then. So what that brings us to is what I would call net spendable dollars, okay? What you can actually spend. And the number has gone from 17.3 in 2017 to 12.5 in the current fiscal year. You say, what changed? Primarily out-of-state waivers. That's the big driving factor behind this. It is a strategy to draw students from other states to your university by waiving the out-of-state portion. It's done all over higher education. It was something, though, that got implemented on this campus between the 17 and 18 fiscal year. And so, therefore, that has happened, okay? The other thing that has happened and why it works so well at other institutions and is not working as well here or in the state of Missouri, I might say, deals with funding, okay? State appropriations have been flat or declining over the last several years, so there's nothing to close that gap. The second piece of it is in the state of Missouri, we have a limit on what we're able to do each year regarding tuition and fee increases. So it's kind of the perfect storm, if you will, with these things, okay? The next slide that you'll see deals with state appropriations. In 2017, going back 5 years for performance, we received $21 million. This year, we will receive 19.6 in the current fiscal year. Last year, we got 18.7. You'll recall we endured that in late May and completely missed one of our payments because of the cut. This number, the 19.6, is all we're going to get for FY 21. I would point out this afternoon to you, though, that there is always the possibility that that number could be reduced. Okay. As you'll recall, when we originally built the budget this year, I did not budget everything in state appropriations in our original budget. Okay. Because that number would have been the 20.6 million. We budgeted more along the lines of the 18, and now we've increased it up. Okay. Trying to be conservative. The other thing I would point out is you say, well, you don't have as much money. You got to cut expenses. We have. And this graph shows it. Last year, we spent $31.4 million on salary and compensation on this campus. This year, as it stands today, we're at 27.6. That's $3.8 million that we have cut out of our salary budgets on this campus. That's positions, that's people in staffing areas. So we have been working hard, and that's the reason for the graph, is I want you to see that, okay? The same thing with fringe, which will mirror your compensation. We've had a decrease in those. Our supplies and services up slightly right at this time, but that 13, remember the 685 that I showed you earlier in rollover funds, that would be included in that, okay? We're operating extremely lean now in our supplies and services budget, okay? And so that demonstrates that. Our utilities budget, last year we spent $2 million. We're expecting 2.5 at this time. We're still looking at these numbers, okay? Was hopeful based on some of the improvements that we have made in our air handling systems with some new boilers, chillers, and things like that, that we may have some additional savings here. And I do think we will. However, we've also experienced over the last couple of years some fairly mild winters. This last month has not been mild, okay? And it has -20 will tax out a lot of units on your campus from a heating standpoint. The other issue, and for those of you that have been on the board sometime, you recall the debt service. There's refinance. They rolled the interest down for a couple of years. The principal payment portion of the debt service payment, but that came home to roost this year, and we have to pick that up. So that's another issue that we have. So what does all this mean? Just in summary, from 20 to where we're at from a budget standpoint this year, we're down $4.9 million, okay, in revenues. We have eliminated $3.4 million worth of expenses, but that still leaves us 1.5 down between these 2 years, okay? Questions on any of that? Last year to this year, just a quick comparison on some of the key indicators.
Daryl, what of the foundation contributions, or how much has been factored into?
I have not factored into our current situation, Lee. Governor Teeman, I have not factored it in yet.
Okay, so what you've done so far, that's still.
That is correct.
Make sure we're all.
That is correct. Thank you for that. And we're going to talk about that in just a few moments, okay? As I go through this.
I have one question.
Sure.
Does the 19.6 of state funding include COVID money and the 1.9 capital that you've talked about?
No.
No, separate.
The 19 million does not include, the 1.9 is separate. Yes. And I should have that, Governor Berry. I think I've got it delineated separately on the line so that we don't think that we can use it for operating, I guess, is the way we budgeted. Okay. Okay. So let's talk about this year and what the plan is. Okay. And before I start going through this, let me just say the plan is painful to a campus that's already experienced pain. But we have no choice, in my estimation. We have a current budget shortfall of $4.5 million. So what are we going to do? We are going to review and adjust all areas. I spoke with Dr. Kennedy earlier this week. We spoke again this morning. We are committed as a campus, and I've spoken with my colleagues, many of them behind. We're all on board. We know this is not going to be easy, but we believe we're up for the task. We're going to adjust all areas. The first thing I want to do is look at some, what I would call low-hanging fruit to address this issue. Number one, let's talk about what we have budgeted for scholarships and what we awarded. Is there savings there? We had an enrollment estimate of a certain number of students. We didn't meet those estimates. So therefore, we have awarded less scholarships than we thought we would. And those numbers will be borne out as you look at the percentages of where we're at. So we're going to look at those. Utilities. I spoke with Brian Atkins yesterday about this. We do believe we can get a few $100,000 out of our utility budget based upon some of the things that we have incorporated on this campus. The next item is travel. We have several hundreds of thousands of dollars in travel, professional development funds that we're not going to use in this current year. Okay. Primarily due to the pandemic. Okay. So we think we can adjust those. We will look at supplies and services budget. Okay. You say, how are you going to do that? I know what it took, and I'll say it that way, okay, for us to get through last year. After we declared a financial emergency, which we are still in, we can make those comparisons and see what really needs to happen between now and June 30. Okay. This is not an extended cut. We're not talking about FY22. We're talking about fiscal year 21 and what it will take to get us through this year. The other thing is this. We have several lines in our budget, personnel budget, that currently have not been filled. Okay. Dean Jones is behind me. He's got a couple of lines in his budget where there are faculty lines, and this is just one example, but there's a faculty line. We're not going to fill that faculty line this year, okay? It will go back into the budget next year. We're going to search for that position, all of those things, but we're not going to fill it in this fiscal year. And that is savings we can pull back to get us a more realistic approach to what we need to do budgetarily, okay? So that's the expense side. I don't know of any new revenue streams. Okay. And I put that on there. Okay. We've tried a couple of endeavors. They're still in their infancy, I would say, to bring more revenue in. So what does that mean? Here's the number. As I stand today, is 1.821081. Governor Teeman, this is to your point from the foundation. Here's my thinking. Okay. eliminated positions in FY '22. We know we have those numbers next year. Okay? To me, we should take that money, okay, because we know that will be cut out of our budget for next year. The concept that the foundation has $4.5 million that they can give us, so we should not do anything additional and take that $4.5 million is ludicrous in my mind. I'll just say it. Okay, here's why. Once it's gone, Governor Teeman, Governor Woolman, you know, once it's gone, it's gone. There is no fallback position for the university once those funds are gone. Not knowing what the future holds, it seems much like a wiser course of action to Dr. Kennedy and myself, as we've discussed this, to draw down what we know will be gone next year, and then to take the steps on our expenses for the current year, or to put it like I would put it at my household, live within our means, make it work. Okay? And that will be that we will be adjusting $2.6 million out of our budget. That's a lot. But from a percentage standpoint of what our total budget is, it's not that dramatic. Okay? Questions?
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
If it's not, that now's not the time to tell me to be
That's
quiet,
okay.
it's fine. What in the non-operating revenue and expenses?
Yes.
There's 2.7 million budgeted
Yes,
under other.
yes.
You
Principal payments.
Okay,
That's the principal. It's the principal. In a true accounting format, Governor Norton, you would know that that would come off the balance sheet
yes,
side.
I'm very confused
Right,
by all of that,
yes.
I have to tell you.
Yeah. And so that's a placeholder to trying to show us
Okay,
a line, and I've stuck it there.
okay.
That's the principal. Yes.
And then this
Yes.
cash thing, the flopper that's in our
Yes.
book compared to that graph you
Yes,
showed, is
yes.
quite a bit different.
It is. And I'll back up to that graph. If you'd like for me to.
Well, I just need to make sure I understand.
No. It's 12 million. There's about 3.9, I think was the number. Let me look. $3.4 million difference
Okay,
from what I had on the graph. And that deals with a federal drawdown for PAIL, SEOG, and some of our federal funds that the federal government did not hit our bank
well,
account by
that's the one
January.
where- yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, got you.
Did not hit our bank account by January
But didn't
31
that-
as they had.
Didn't that graph show 20 million in reserves? But this is only showing 12.6.
Should be 17.
Or maybe I'm looking at the wrong column, but
Yeah, you are.
I am looking, okay, good.
No,
No. Maybe
no,
that-
that, you're
maybe the
right. No, you're
headings
right. I'll check my number.
are- Okay.
Let me do that. You're absolutely
Yeah.
right.
And
I
then
did
my
that, didn't
last question is on
Sure.
your last slide,
Uh-huh.
like that adjustment needed 2.7, and I agree with your analogy. I mean, in the big scheme of things, that's
Right.
not that big of a number, but
Right.
won't we in next fiscal year need, let's assume nothing changes. I don't know if that's a fair assumption, but we'll have to actually make up 4.5 million, right?
We
Or are we
will.
gonna always go to the foundation?
No,
Okay, just want to make sure.
absolutely not.
Okay.
Absolutely not. And that's the next portion of my presentation this
sorry.
afternoon. No,
Sorry.
that's my next
I'll-
portion of my presentation this afternoon is next year. And FY '22 and kind of some things that are in play in that to close that gap. So if you're 4.5 now, you cut the 2.6 out, right? That leaves us with the 1.8 that we know we won't have an expenditure. So that comes off the 4.5. So we're down
Oh,
to.
okay,
So we're down to that number. And then what are our additional revenues opportunities for next year? and what other changes may we make.
Right,
Dr. Kennedy.
And Governor Norton, I appreciate that question greatly because that's exactly what we have to address.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay.
I do have one more question,
Sure.
sorry. Are we sure of the gifts number that's budgeted, even though we haven't?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. We are. And what we do is we budget those gifts numbers and it's an actual to actual in some of the areas. For instance, the Craig School of Business, it's an actual to actual. And so we take their budget, we budget what we think we'll get in. And then at the end of the year, really, we do it really on about a quarterly basis.
Mhm.
We draw down the funds based on the actual expenditures.
Oh, okay.
And so we match it back. Yes.
I just didn't know if I was gonna have to put on my sales hat or not.
Well, we have discussed bake sales at numerous times. But Governor Schoonover is the only real baker in the group, I think, so we're in trouble.
We don't know about Lisa yet.
I'm a pretty mean baker.
Oh,
actually,
okay.
But I don't know if I can make up 2.7 million.
Okay,
That's a lot of cookies.
all right. Betsy, can you get that on record that she's a? Okay. So any more questions for the current thing? Okay,
I've got one.
yes,
Back on the utilities,
yes,
you were talking about saving more utilities. But last year we had a substantial increase. And that was while we done the improvements to the chillers, et cetera.
correct.
Taking into account, we had a very cold month this
Yes.
past month, but I think in the overall history of this part of the country, it's not terribly bad winter.
Right.
So how do you see that we're going to cut that much utility expense?
We believe that we're 250. I can tell you what the number is above on that, based on past history. That's still, even with the winter and stuff, that's still 200,000 above last year. We're hopeful that it is more than that at the end of the day, but we feel comfortable at this time, given what we paid thus far, a fairly mild late summer, where it wasn't extremely hot and some things like that. So we've already gained some savings compared to last year in some of those areas.
Didn't we cut down on some expenses last summer and
We did.
fall?
We
even?
did, we did, we did. And we're trying to take into account some of those things that were in there, the pandemic hit, like, and some things like that. So we're being conservative in our reduction, but we feel pretty confident that we're there.
And Darryl, wouldn't it be fair that, I mean, the process that you're going through and have talked about, you've already done that. This is going back to the well for the second, third,
Yes,
fourth
that is
time,
correct.
trying to keep
That,
cutting more. I mean, this isn't the
that-
first time we've cut utilities or looked at that. This is the
Yes.
first time we've cut travel.
right, right. As you may or may not recall last year, we really didn't go into, once the pandemic hit, we didn't go in and slice budgets the way we should have, budgetarily. We grappled with an iron fist. And what I mean by that is it either had to have myself or the president to approve it, to purchase it. Okay. I really don't want to do that again. I'd rather cut the budget and let people spend it within those guidelines. Because it became, Dr. Looney, you were here, it becomes very cumbersome to do those types of things, okay? We all have jobs, we're all wearing multiple hats, all those type of things. And for every time, Dr. Mace needs to spend something, she's got to track down myself or Dr. Kennedy to, that's, you know what I'm saying? It was an attention getter, I'll say that, okay? But it's not a good rule of thumb or a good practice strategy for longer periods of time. It was what we could do in the moment as quickly as possible. I supported it then. Given that situation, I would support it again. However, given our current situation, I think there are better ways of handling it because we now know more.
Right. And I think another important point is we need to really educate the campus on how to budget at a university. And I think this puts an onus on us to do that. We're starting to have, Daryl has his budget committee that he meets with. We're going to be having a town hall to do this, but we have to teach everyone what it means to budget and where we are financially. So I think this is a much better mechanism to do that through.
Right. And to that point, with being such a new board for really all of us,
Sure.
to degrees, that the whole budgetary process wasn't just educating campus. When we entered this and tasked you with trying to get your arms around this,
Right.
to say that our budgetary system needed improvement would be a fair statement.
That would be a fair statement.
Right. And so now it is, we are living with the budget. We see you have brought to us fairly regularly adjustments to the budget.
Sure.
But as it goes, but we have an actual budget that then we adjust in real time as need be. But we have accurate snapshots at some very stated mileposts
Right.
that may not have existed to that
And-
extent in the past.
Yeah, and I have tried during my time here to align my reports. They're the same. The board generally meets in February, so we're looking at January from last year's numbers to this year's numbers. We meet in November or early December, we're looking at the midpoint in November. Those dates so that we can get the snapshots and the up and down. I would say the big issue for me that has really hurt us on the tuition and fees, and the thing I did not forecast correctly, okay, it's on me, is the number of classes that moved to an online environment, which avoided a lot of student fees that we were, because of our structure, that we would normally have accumulated. And that's where the biggest decrease in that is. Okay. Other questions? Yeah, Al.
This is more of a comment. For those of us that have been in business for some time, rather than going from the top and cut down, you go to zero base and come back up and
Yeah.
justify everything you're doing.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't understand that's the way you do business.
Right.
And, the other side of it is we can talk about, audits and everything else. You're following cash a whole bunch of the time in here when you go through it and do it. So one thing I'm happy to see is we're trending in the right direction, but the very point that you're looking at, we still got a ways to go
do.
until we can finally say we're there. And we can all talk about how long that is, but
Mhm.
it's going to take a while.
Well, and you've, I sound like a broken record in some ways, because I have said numerous times that we didn't get to where we're at overnight,
Right.
and we will not get it all rectified overnight. It's a process. It will take time. I believe that the things we are doing are working. I think our audit report from last year shows that the things we were doing are working. Okay, so we'll look at those things. Okay, and continue this path. Okay, the other thing I would say about the future, and is to your comment about zero-based budgeting, we're in between right now as a campus, in the sense of we have stopped or are stopping doing some things, okay? And that will continue for a short period of time. So the ground up approach, right, from the ground up of zero-based budgeting is certainly something we're going to be looking at in the future, but we're not there yet in order to do that, because things are so fluid among some of the departments and areas on campus. Okay, yeah.
Daryl, and I know I can find this in the book, and I'm
That's
going to
okay.
ask you rather than go digging, but what is, excuse me, what's the number of student enrollment on the negative side compared to years past? How many students are we down?
From a student credit hour,
Yes,
I'd have to go back to my slide and
I think
do it.
it's 12.9% credit hours.
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank
It's
you.
a-
So
it's
over
It's around 12, I knew that.
Okay, 10 or 12%.
12%, which is about 5,800-ish student credit.
Okay,
Okay.
so does that correlate to the number of dorm rooms needed? What I'm getting at is, are we down enough we could close one dormitory just for safety?
Okay. The answer to your question would be yes, given a normal environment. Because of spacing during the pandemic, we have not been able to do that. We are currently at about 70% in our residence halls. I talked with the staff there. We discussed the potential of doing that. But because of the guidelines that we face, it became very difficult to actually close one down.
Okay,
I have a
Really a goal to work towards, I mean, is we want to get that as close to 100% as possible. 'Cause
Absolutely.
That's one of our best profit centers.
Yes,
When you compare, when we talk about being an economical bang for your buck in higher education.
right.
That is our tuition. It is not our room and board. Room and board cost really at virtually every school throughout the state, and really even other than, the coast, I mean, is
Yeah.
pretty similar.
Yeah,
That if you're at Mizzou, your room and board isn't much different than it is here. And so that is a profit center, but that's why we want that to be as full as possible. It has to be efficient, but that's our goal to work back towards. And that's why it's on the slides. I mean, the hit that we have when we're down 20-some% or
Right.
whatever it is on that. And that's something we really, I think, can have some optimism that it's a blip based upon COVID. Some of the other things may or may not, we may have to redefine what normal is, but we have had very high occupancy on campus here.
we have.
With requiring, whether it be student athletes, freshmen, if they don't live locally, and that's been a great source. But good point. I mean, if it's a temporary option, I'm glad you looked at it.
Is our gross margin per credit hour significantly different between online and in person? Or do we know that?
I really don't know off the top of my head.
Might be something to look at.
Hannah had a question.
Yeah.
Hannah?
I was gonna ask the student fees deficit regarding online courses.
Yes,
Is that predominantly due to teach out programs being moved online, or is it COVID classes moved online?
it's COVID.
Okay.
It's COVID. Our teach out, and you're going to hear that's probably, you may have heard that that's predominantly why our SSCH is down, is teach outs and things like that. That's, I would say that is very minimal piece to that puzzle. Okay. It's more in line with the fact that we were down 25% plus in freshman enrollment for the fall semester. And as you think about teach outs and things like that, as you saw from the graph, we've got $1.8 million of faculty still here to teach those programs that are going out. So that's really not the issue,
Mhm.
in my estimation.
So the online courses aren't hybrid ones that are online. It's strictly online classes that students register for.
There are some of that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and one of the things that we've done because of this pandemic and the environment is we've backed away. We're trying to be fair and upfront and honest with our students. If you have a class that has a materials fee, you're familiar with this, right? But that class had to shift to an online environment. we removed that materials fee because you were not able to access those resources and things like that. So it's not fair for us to charge that to you. And so we've done that. Dr. Davenport and I worked with a group in fine arts about 2 weeks ago to take care of that very situation.
And if I may, Daryl, too.
Yes.
What we also tried to do related to that was to seek reimbursement through some of the CARES funding that was available to us, because for some lost tuition revenues, and we were denied. So we did make an
Yes,
attempt to get that
That's,
back.
that's right too. The guidelines are pretty strict on revenue reimbursements, okay? From the CARES Act funds. Okay?
Thank you.
Uh-huh. Other questions before we talk about next year? Okay. I just want to, and I promise not to be overly long. I talk slow, so it takes me a little time, right, to say. Okay, let's talk about tuition and fees for FY '22. Okay? We're not here to make a decision today. What I want to do is to give you some notification on what we're thinking, what our options are. Okay? As I mentioned, we are currently under an act. Mr. Johnson, can you remember the number? HESFA? There's an act, legislation. It's a Higher Education Student Funding Act, okay? HESFA for short. And basically what it does is it takes the average, and I'll explain this to you when we set tuition and fees. But basically what it does is it takes the average of all the educational institutions in tuition and mandatory fees, averages those, computes that to a consumer price index, right? They calculate it and say, this is what you get. This is how much you can go up, okay? Here's the issue we've got. The current CPI calculation for higher education was 1.4%. Okay. However, part of the HESFA legislation is this. If you do not receive all of your state appropriation in a preceding year, then there's an allowance that you can recoup some of those funds in tuition and fees. For us, that would mean, because we only got 18 million of 20 million that we were supposed to get, that we could potentially go up to 6.5% in tuition and mandatory fees. So where are we going to land? Somewhere between this. Okay. I'm leaning more towards the upper portion right now as a recommendation, I will say, because currently we stand third from the bottom in this state. I do not think there is a lot of price elasticity between higher education and the market. I don't think that $50 between us and this university is going to be the deciding factor. And I also believe, personally, that being the cheapest is not always a selling card to individuals.
What is our per credit hour rate?
$220 for tuition,
Just
okay? $220, okay?
Daryl, are you getting any type of feedback or indication from our peer institutions of what kind of bump they're looking at?
I am not at this time. Everybody is holding back, and Dr. Kennedy meets with presidents and chancellors in the state in DHE, workforce development, on a weekly basis. What I'm hearing in my world, though, is everybody's kind of holding it close to the vest in the hopes that we get some additional core funding. Okay,
Right, and I think the other part of that is people are kind of waiting to see who's gonna go first, who's gonna do this. So everybody right now is just talking
Right.
about when are they gonna make the announcement?
Right.
What month is it gonna come out? So we're not there yet.
it's always been my philosophy as a CFO, Governor Teeman, this is one area you don't necessarily want to be early mover on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Have you done a pro forma or anything of if we go up that much, where are we still third from the bottom, or do we move up into the middle of the pack, or?
Well, it would depend on what they do. My goal would be, I think realistically, for where our location is, for what we offer and the quality that we have, I think we're undervalued in the marketplace. I really do. Okay. I think we've got some movement there. I don't want us to be number one or number two. That is not my goal. Okay. But I do think there's no significant advantage for us from a student recruitment standpoint to be third from the bottom. Somewhere in the middle, I think helps us. Quite honestly, I think we leave money on the table.
Right, and maybe I guess a couple of things. One, obviously, that based on a percentage being lower, I mean, that's
Yeah.
like giving the CEO a 2% raise and the lowest paid employee. It's not the same. So if we move up 5%, 6%,
Right.
that's not going to be in real dollars as much
No.
anyhow. And just from a historical perspective, being on this board for a little over 2 years, I'm a graybeard in that regard. But there was, we'll say, a bit of misunderstanding, maybe historically, of if we could, a term was used, bank
Yes.
the increases that were allowed each year. If there was, just to use numbers, if there was a 2% allowable increase and we went 1.5%,
Right.
there was the misconception that we had that extra 0.5% we could save, and then down the road add even more on that. That is incorrect. That, I mean, I know there's a little bit of a look back.
Yeah.
But to a large degree, it's use it or lose it, correct?
Yeah, for the most part, there's a process that a university has to go through in order to bank it. Okay, and we may have fell short in one of those areas with DHE.
I mean, my point is that we act based upon what we have now, and that is not
Yeah.
a rainy day.
I would, right. I would tell you that, and I'm just throwing something out, okay? So let's say that we have between this range, right? Let's say we do 3%, okay? I will submit the documents to bank the other 3.5% with DHE, so that next year, if CPI comes in at 1.4 again, we're able to take some of that 3.5 and put it in, okay? If we choose to do that.
But that would be the next fiscal year.
That would be the following fiscal year, yes, FY '23.
Can you talk, I don't know if you know these numbers off the top of your head, but as far as tuition increases over the last few years, around what percent it's been?
They've been minimal. There was I think the year I came, it was already set in stone at about 4%. I think we did just under 3% last year, 2.8 maybe. Yeah.
Daryl, you were speaking of the state average of all the schools here,
Mhm.
that we were 3 from the bottom. What is the bottom and what is the top? Do you know that? Do we know that?
From a university standpoint, names?
No.
You don't have to be, just
the-
what's the bottom and what's the top.
Well, I will tell you everything, I will tell you everything inclusive is that it's over $10,000 annually at the top. And that we are around seven-ish.
Yeah.
Is where we're at. And then there's one in the high 6s.
Okay.
You'd be surprised where the higher ones are. Might be just a drive away to you, Governor Eversole.
Well, we're not treated like everybody else is. To
Well,
be very, very, very simple.
yeah.
And there was mistakes made in the past that put us in that position, but let's forget that.
So, but this is where we're at. And then there's one other piece to this on tuition fees. Is other fees. We charge additional program fees. We charge lab fees, things like that. So I'll work with the provost, the deans, those in setting those, okay? And for those of you that have been on the board for a number of years, you'll recall last year, it seemed like I had rolling slides because there were all these things that were charged that this group never had any idea about. So I promise you, we have a commitment. Nothing gets charged to our students that does not come to this board. That's what we do. So that's where we're at.
I have one more question.
Okay.
The 6.5, is that strictly on the 220 credit hour fee or is that on all types of tuition fees?
That would be on the 6.5 if we decided to do that.
That
right.
number margin.
Yeah. That will be on the tuition. It will be on mandatory fees, which is for us is max experience, SGA fee, technology facility fee,
All
those types of things.
Thank you.
Very limited. Okay. Yes, sir.
Has there been a measure on the accelerated scholarship? You know, we started a program
Yes.
that was introduced. Do we know what that impact's going to be going forward as far as rolling, you know, a student has the opportunity to have an increased scholarship year after year
Yeah.
for graduation?
Well,
opportunity?
the concept is this, that as it increases, what we have is, yes, the Griffin Guarantee will increase semester by semester, but we have a lot more expensive scholarships that are rolling off at the same time. Okay. Was it forecasted out? Yes. The forecast, though, is only as good as the enrollment number. Okay. And I would say, and you may have saw this in the press, we've had to tweak that a little bit because we do think we suffered from enrollment decline over something called the A+ scholarship that we are now putting in. Okay. So it's a plus. We worked on that. Dr. Mason and I, Dr. Jones, Dr. Kennedy, others met with a lot of the schools. We figured out we think we're losing some students that would have normally came here over a few $100s. And so we revised that. I would say that who knows after 20 months that I'd be the long standing person here next to Josh and Doug and Logan, but I would say that anytime you start a new scholarship program, that you have to make adjustments. Everywhere I've been, you had to make adjustments to meet the market, right? You can't just dig in and say, this is all we're going to do. You're going to have to adjust and see. I think President Wilson was aware of that. I think, you know, Vice President Cravens was aware. I think all of those involved in that. So we've made a minor tweak. The basis of what was set in motion still stands and will stand. Okay. So we'll see. Time will tell. We're forecasting best we can, I guess is my answer to your question. Okay.
Daryl, does it matter in our state funding whether it's an in-state student or an out-of-state student? You mentioned that.
It does.
Okay. And
In our state funding?
yes.
No.
Okay, so within, I get that if we have an out-of-state student, that there is a different
Right.
fee structure with that, but you know, the original intent was to, I mean, we
Yes.
were right on a state border. We're
Sure.
not far from another state border.
Sure.
That's not
Sure.
uncommon, and then it kind of expands from
Right.
there. So from a state funding standpoint, it doesn't matter if the student is from St. Joseph or from Elwood, Kansas, right? I mean, we do you're doing an
There's not-
accounting
there's not-
formula that says that would have been out of state tuition.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
We have to know from an accounting standpoint, in order to accurately reflect financial statements, what our discount is, what our discount rates are, how much we discount. That's why we do it. Yeah.
That's where I struggle with
Yeah.
how much savings is there, because our cost of educating that student isn't any different,
No,
no matter
No,
where
no.
they're from.
No, no.
And we're not gonna, if a kid just across the river would have to pay out-of-state tuition, they're
right.
going to look elsewhere.
But if you're losing, the other side of that, if you're losing more in-state students, and there's more out-of-state, then you see it collapses a little bit.
Clearly, we want to expand in multiple
Yes.
categories,
Right.
but
Right.
I'm having a hard time grasping how that part of
Well, I'll
scholarship
tell you what's
reduction-
happened. I'll tell you what's happened between 17 and now, back to my earlier slide that I think you're referring to with that number. The issue is that we're drawing a lot more out-of-state students than we were. Okay, by that, while not retaining as many in-state students to keep that number up.
Right, our percentage
Proportionate.
is getting
That's right.
beat up pretty good, but
That's right.
the actual
That's right.
numbers there. I mean, but fundamentally, though, I believe, aren't there opportunities within scholarships? Because
Yes,
when you are on the lower tier of the cost,
right.
typically you don't see that much reduction.
That's
It's
correct.
the private schools or the high
Yes.
tuition places that
Yes,
create these faux models of 30,000 in tuition, but just applying gets you 5,000 in a scholarship. And
yeah.
so on, so on,
Right.
so on. So
Right. It's that discount rate and that's something that colleges and universities all over the country struggle with. Is trying to make that work.
Do we know why we have more out of state? Okay. I like
Yeah.
it. I like that. The next question.
No, I really do think athletics is the big draw for that.
Okay, and then the
I
next
really
question I
do.
have is, I'm assuming we care because we don't get as much appropriation. Why do we care?
It's not that we care, it's as much as we still make money. Okay, that's the bottom line, right? We still make money. The problem is as you look at that discount rate, the other part's not as high because we're not getting as many in-state students. It's just a graph to show you kind of how it's coming across.
But do we get paid differently?
We do not get paid differently.
So we should be able to figure this out.
We should, and we
we're
are.
deficient in our in-state. We're doing, actually,
That's
the out-of-state is actually something we
The
should be
actual-
proud of.
Yeah,
That we're bringing kids
our
who
out-of-state
wouldn't-
is really good.
Right,
It's
but
the
we
in-state.
shouldn't care. Money's money. Why do we care where it comes from?
Well, it's the overall enrollment picture is
That's
the
my point.
problem.
Why do we
That's the
care?
point. Yes.
I mean, if we do, just tell me. We care.
No, no.
because blah, 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 blah.
No,
To
no,
me, it's
no,
like,
we do.
just
Yeah.
Get the numbers up.
Right. That's right.
Governor
We just
Landis.
need to get the numbers up. Governor Landis.
Well, I want to go back to something where we're going to increase our value is there's a young lady sitting back in here that we're going to convince them why it's better to be here because we got a product that's effectively a product that is worth buying.
Yes.
And we have not here, I can say this, like, we haven't been good salesmen of what the product is that we're selling.
Do we know what it is?
Let me,
Think
A
we
good
know?
education.
Well, I'll give you an example. You know, engineering technology is something that over the years, and to the point, because we were only down the road a little way, we knew the value coming out. But we didn't know how to go in here and convince students coming out of our own community why they should be doing it.
So, I mean, if you know, then it's just a matter of plan, right?
Yeah.
Well, and if you talk to other, I don't know how to put this, but the schools around, because I'm in education,
uh-huh.
would much rather have education students from Missouri Western
Well, I think
than from neighboring schools. They said they are far more qualified and they have the experience they need to be a good teacher. And we don't put that out there. People don't know that.
Right. I also think, our nursing is solid, our business school is solid. We have a lot of things going for us. We have
We got a
biology,
nursing program.
chemistry, some of those areas that are great.
You got a lot of-
But we are also known as that school that you don't have to have a certain ACT. Anybody can go to. So
Right.
that's kind of a perspective that's out
Yeah,
there
and,
too.
and we
So-
are an open enrollment, so,
Right.
so that's the issue. I would say, and not to steal my boss's thunder, but you guys are absolutely right about marketing and things like that. And that's why, and I'm sure she'll report, we have engaged someone to assist us with those, because we have to, what are we, who are we, what do we do? And those are things we're working. Okay? Let me get through this. Resident life and housing for next year. Okay? Well,
Maybe.
there it is. That's going to be my proposal when we come back. Okay? There's a lot of reasons for this. We'll talk about it at a later date. Okay? But that's going to be my proposal for housing for next year. Dining services. I've been in negotiations with our third party vendor on this. We're around 2.5%. I'm still working on them. They came in at 3.9. We're down to 2.5. So we're still working on that one, okay? State appropriations for next year to restore back to the FY20 core, which, as you recall, was the $20 million number, okay? There is a possible addition of some funds from state appropriation. I know that the Kofi group, the college university presidents, collectively outside the Mizzou system, have been lobbying hard to get some core funding because of our rank nationally, 49th, I believe, nationally, the state of Missouri in higher education funding, to try to do that. Also, I know Mr. Johnson's been in contact with someone today, one of our local representatives, working on something for us. So we're working hard. Dr. Kennedy's been down to Jefferson City several times. So we're working on some additional funding. Will it come to fruition? I don't know, but there is that possibility, right? And we certainly could use it from an operating standpoint. The other thing that we have from an expense side, we already touched on this previously, and that's the vacated salaries that we'll have for next year. And then we'll also take a good hard look with the reorganization and the continued thing of our other operating expenses and how those might be reallocated and reworked. Okay. Other questions and comments? I'm sorry, I guess we're a little long on our time. I'm sorry for that. Did not mean to do that. Be happy. I'll be here if you have additional questions. I owe Governor Norton an explanation, so I'm going to find that before the next time I'm up.
Which will be yet today. So I mean,
Which will be yet today, right?
we can
And,
still ask more questions if you want.
But I do, again, I thank you for your support. I appreciate, I feel like we're moving in the right direction. We're not there yet, but I want to reiterate that. But I do want to say, I do believe we're taking the right steps in my estimation, and thank you.
Thank you, Daryl. Before we end this committee meeting, then we'll take a little break before we go to our regularly scheduled full board meeting. We do have a guest here for the swearing in of a new board member. So I'd like to go ahead and do that in this part of the session. So As everyone knows, we've already had questions and input from Bob Walleman, who is going to be sworn in. He's already been confirmed by the Missouri State Senate, but this will be the official swearing in. And I know everyone knows Bob, but just there are some real highlights, and we're very lucky to have Bob's background and expertise and counsel on this board. Bob is a lifelong resident of the St. Joseph community. He is married to Connie, and they will celebrate their 50-year anniversary in August of this year. Connie is the current president of the Missouri Western Ambassadors Board. It is a family affair with the university. That's fantastic. Bob is the founder and managing partner of Deluxe Truck Stop LLC here in St. Joseph, that's celebrated their 40-year anniversary in 2019. Bob currently serves on a number of other boards as well. He is the immediate past chair of the National Association of Truck Stop Operators Board. He is the current treasurer of the Kansas City Automobile Museum Board. In addition to the Board of Governors, Bob also serves on the Missouri Western State University Foundation Board and is the vice chair of that organization. He is on the Progressive Community Services Board and the South St. Joseph Industrial Sewer District Board of Supervisors. Bob is a former board member of the United Way of St. Joseph and the St. Joseph Chamber of Commerce and Hillcrest Transitional Living of Buchanan County, now known as Pivotal Point. Bob, these are, I guess they could be my words, but Bob is certified car crazy. I think that is accurate. That's a compliment. He and Connie have a number of classic cars and modern day cars. He and his son race, but not competitively, a 2017 Porsche 911S, and have been on tracks that include Road America in Wisconsin, Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas, and most recently the Indianapolis 500 track. Bob hit the highest speed of 155 miles an hour. That's when he was late getting to a board meeting at Indianapolis this past October. When Bob isn't racing or involved here at Missouri Western or all those other ventures, he and Connie enjoy the Maine coast and have made many trips to the coast. Bob and Connie have 3 adult children, Erica, Nick, and Whitney. We very much welcome you, Bob, and officially we invite the Honorable Judge Daniel Kellogg to come and administer your oath of office to you.
What you also don't know about Bob is that he and I were actually brothers in the musical Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. So if he wanted to sing for you, he would be more than happy to do so. I think it must go with the
I think you just lost me. Cannot carry a tune in a bucket. It requires a great choir for that to happen.
Bob, we're gonna come around.
All right.
This one's Paul. Bob, if you please raise your right hand.
Excuse me just a second.
That's okay. I, Bob Walleman,
I, Bob Williman,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
I will support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution
and the Constitution
of the State of Missouri,
of the State of Missouri,
and faithfully demean myself
and faithfully demean myself
as a governor
as a governor
for Missouri Western
of Missouri Western
State University
State University
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability.
so help me God.
So help me God. Thank
All
you.
right, thank you. Thank you, Judge and alumni Kellogg. And if there is no other business for the Finance Committee, we will take a 10-minute break and then start our regular board meeting.